This is the story of a country that set out to save the tiger, the most dangerous predator on the planet, succeeded far beyond what anyone predicted, and is now finding out exactly what that success costs the people living next to it. Today is July 29th, International Tiger Day, and Nepal is releasing the results of its 5th National Tiger Census on this exact day, the once every 4 years count that reveals whether one of conservation's biggest success stories is still climbing. This count isn't a guess, and knowing where it comes from matters. Nepal's Department of National Parks and Wildlife Conservation launched the census back on December 16, 2025, at Kasara, the headquarters of Chitwan National Park, and sent more than 250 trained personnel out across roughly 8,400 square kilometers of habitat in Nepal's Terai region, the lowland belt along the Indian border that forms the heart of the Terai Arc landscape. 3 conservation complexes carried the workload: Chitwan Parsa, Banke Bardiya, and Shuklapanta Laljati. Camera traps did the identifying, not footprints, because Nepal has spotted individual tigers by their stripe patterns since 2009, the same way you'd recognize a person by their fingerprint. The census was conducted in partnership with the National Trust for Nature Conservation, NTNC, and the Zoological Society of London, both of which provided technical support and helped validate the methodology. Expert teams then cross-check every image, making sure no single animal gets counted twice. Fieldwork wrapped in mid-March of this year, and now, on Tiger Day itself, the country is about to tell the world what it found. That result lands on top of one of the most remarkable trend lines in all of modern conservation. Go back to 1995, and Nepal counted just 98 tigers. That crept up to 109 by the year 2000, then 126 in 2005. In 2009 came a slight dip, down to 121, and that low point became the baseline for a completely different era, because from there, the climb got steep. 198 by 2013, 235 by 2018, and then, on Global Tiger Day 2022, 355, nearly triple that 2009 baseline. Break that 2022 countdown park by park, and it maps almost perfectly onto where Nepal invested hardest. 128 tigers in Chitwan, 125 in Bardiya, 41 in Parsa, 36 in Shuklapanta, and 25 in Banke. That's 4 straight censuses of growth, 4 cycles, each one higher than the last. So going into today, one question mattered above all others. Would that streak reach 5? And now, on Tiger Day itself, we finally have the answer. 429. That's the number, up from 355 4 years ago, and the 5th straight count that's only gone one direction, up. But this time, it crossed a line, because Nepal was never supposed to hold more than about 400 tigers. That was the ceiling, the most room this country had, and they just blew past it. So you'd think every corner of Nepal is overflowing with tigers. It's not. In one place, the number went the other way. It fell. That place is Bardiya, and Bardiya is where the tigers have started killing people. Because a century ago, an estimated 100,000 wild tigers roamed across Asia, and poaching combined with habitat loss wiped out 95% of them by the early 2000s. 3 of the 9 historic tiger subspecies, the Javan, the Bali, and the Caspian, are gone entirely, and Nepal's own tigers collapsed right alongside everyone else's. Poaching for the illegal wildlife trade, habitat fragmentation, and conflict with nearby communities had driven the population to the edge by the 1970s. What actually turned that around comes down to 2 things running at the same time. Enforcement is the first, and here's where Nepal built something genuinely unusual: a zero-poaching model, meaning that for roughly a decade, not a single tiger in the country was shot for its parts. 2014 marked the year Nepal became the first country on Earth to hit zero poaching across all 3 of its flagship species at once: tigers, rhinos, and elephants together. None of that happened through foreign rangers or private security either, since the backbone of this enforcement is local people. Community-based anti-poaching units, organized under what's formally called Community-Based Anti-Poaching Operations, CBAPO, and staffed entirely by local youth, patrol jointly with the Nepali Army Army and park rangers, and more than 400 of these units now operate nationwide. Real tools back them up too. Systems called the Spatial Monitoring and Reporting Tool, SMART, and the Management Information System, MIST, that let patrols log and analyze data on wildlife and threats in real time, instead of just walking a route and hoping for the best. Chitwan even gave its operation a name, Operation Panthera, and in the Kata Wildlife Corridor, the transboundary passage that connects Bardiya National Park in Nepal to Katernia Ghat Wildlife Sanctuary in India, community anti-poaching teams have physically apprehended poachers crossing in from India, seizing their weapons and traps in the process. What happens around the parks matters just as much as what happens inside them, and that's the second piece of the puzzle. Nepal's model fences off protected areas from nearby villages, compensates families for livestock or crops lost to wildlife, and works to cut communities' reliance on firewood gathered inside park boundaries. Tiger tourism does heavy lifting here too, feeding conservation money straight into local development. Add to that the transboundary corridors built with India, letting tigers, elephants, and rhinos move safely between countries instead of getting boxed into shrinking, isolated pockets, and you start to see the full system. One person working on this conservation model put it simply: communities destroy forests for roads and settlements, then complain when tigers enter villages, when really, tigers haven't entered anyone's settlements. Settlements have entered tiger habitat. A tiger is carnivorous, he added, but it isn't violent, and the biggest threat tigers actually face is us. None of that changes what comes next, though, because this story doesn't fit neatly into a celebration, and it deserves honesty rather than a quiet skip past the hard part. Nationally, Nepal's own data shows deaths from tiger attacks have fallen for 3 years running, even as the tiger population keeps climbing. 7 fiscal years back in 2021 to 2022, the toll stood at 21 deaths. That number dropped to 12 the following year, then 10, then just 7 in the most recent fiscal year on record. More tigers doesn't automatically mean more conflict, Nepal's own ecologists argue, since tigers spread into new forest as their numbers grow. And the real danger shows up when people unknowingly walk into those areas gathering firewood or foraging for food. Only around 5% of all tigers, by researchers' estimates, ever pose a real threat to a person, and catching those specific animals early prevents most casualties. Zoom into Bardiya district specifically, though, and the picture turns considerably harder. Over 5 years, tigers alone killed 36 people in Bardiya, out of 53 total deaths from wildlife attacks in that same stretch. A separate count puts total tiger attack deaths nationally at more than 60 people between 2019 and 2025, with a peak of 21 deaths in 2022, more than any year in the decade before it. 3 out of every 4 wildlife attacks on humans in the Bardiya region, researchers studying the area in detail found, came specifically from tigers, and almost all of them struck in broad daylight, with the overwhelming majority landing within a single kilometer of the forest's edge. Numbers only tell part of it, though. Just last December, an 18-year-old schoolgirl named Benita Pariyar died in a tiger attack close to Bardiya National Park in the Kata Wildlife Corridor, walking home from a tuition class with her mother, a mere 400 meters from her own front door. Days apart, in that same district, Dinesh Chaudhary and Parbati Dangi were killed in separate daylight attacks near their own homes. Even harvesting Neuro, a common local fern, means walking alone into tiger territory during the season it's ready to pick, and a meaningful number of people die doing exactly that every single year. Nepal's national trend line is genuinely improving, and that's the honest version of this story, but specific communities living closest to the recovery are still paying a very real price for it. International Tiger Day itself traces back to 2010, born at the St. Petersburg Tiger Summit in Russia, where all 13 tiger range countries signed onto something called the TX2 goal, a commitment to double the entire world's wild tiger population by 2022, implemented through the Global Tiger Recovery Program, GTRP. Nothing like it had ever been attempted before, the first global recovery target ever set for a single species. Only 3,200 tigers remained on Earth at the time, the lowest point in recorded history. 12 years later, the doubling goal fell short, but something real still happened. Global tiger numbers climbed to somewhere around 5,000, roughly a 40% increase, marking the first sustained global rise in wild tiger numbers in over a century. Results split sharply by country from there. India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Russia all hit or beat their targets, while Malaysia, Indonesia, and Myanmar fell short, and Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia lost their wild tigers completely. India alone now holds somewhere between 70 and 75% of every tiger left in the world, its population climbing from 1,411 in 2006 to 3,682 by 2022. Driven in large part by Project Tiger, India's own national conservation program that launched back in 1973 and became a template other range countries studied closely. Nepal counts among just 4 countries on the planet that can say its tigers came all the way back. So here's where that leaves things. On July 29, 2026, 429 tigers, more maybe than this small country even has room for. And that number sits at the end of 30 years of data, starting from just 98 tigers back in 1995. Every single number in between got earned through community anti-poaching patrols, through corridors stitched across borders, and through villages agreeing to share their land with an animal that can, and sometimes does, kill them. Nepal didn't just save its tigers. It stands among the only places on Earth that can prove a species written off for dead can come all the way back, as long as you're willing to be honest about what that comeback costs the people who make room for it.